When 17-year-old Marcus delivered a package to the Thompson estate, he expected another quick drop-off at another mansion. Then he saw the photograph on the piano, a young woman in a wedding dress, smiling at the camera. It was his mother, 20 years younger, but unmistakably her, in a billionaire's home. Marcus Johnson had been working for quick ship deliveries for 8 months, taking the afternoon shift after school let out. The pay wasn't great, minimum wage plus tips that rarely materialized, but it helped. His mother, Rachel, worked 2 jobs, one as a nurse's aide during the day and another cleaning offices at night. They lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the south side of the city, where the rent was cheap and the walls were thin enough to hear their neighbors' conversations. Marcus was 17, a senior at Lincoln High, and he was good at school. Really good. His GPA was 3.8, and he had dreams of becoming an engineer. But dreams didn't pay for college, so every dollar he made went into the savings account he shared with his mom. She called it their future fund. He called it their get-out-of-here-someday fund. It had always been just the 2 of them. For as long as Marcus could remember, it was him and his mom against the world. When he was younger, he'd asked about his father. Once, his mother's face had gone tight, her eyes had filled with tears, she'd blinked away quickly, and she'd said, "He left before you were born, baby. It's better this way. We have each other." Marcus never asked again. He could see the pain in her eyes, and he loved her too much to make her relive whatever had happened. She was a good mother, the best, actually. She made sure he had everything he needed, even when it meant she went without. She helped him with homework, came to every parent-teacher conference, and told him every single day that he was smart, capable, and destined for greatness. So he worked his delivery job, saved his money, and tried not to think about the father-shaped hole in his life. Today's delivery was to an address in Riverside Estates, the kind of neighborhood where the houses had names instead of numbers and the driveways were longer than his entire street. The package was large and marked fragile, probably something expensive and breakable that rich people ordered on a Tuesday afternoon because they could. Marcus loaded it carefully into his beat-up Honda Civic and drove across town, watching the neighborhoods transform from working class to wealthy with every mile. The Thompson estate was at the end of a tree-lined private drive. Marcus whistled low when he saw it. Estate didn't even do it justice. The house was massive, 3 stories of stone and glass with perfectly manicured lawns, a circular fountain in the front courtyard, and ivy climbing the walls like something out of a movie. He pulled up to the front entrance, checked the package label one more time. William Thompson, handled with extreme care, and grabbed his delivery scanner. The doorbell chimed with actual bells, not a buzzer. Fancy, a woman in her 60s answered, wearing what Marcus assumed was some kind of housekeeper uniform. Her expression was professionally pleasant but distant, the look of someone used to dealing with delivery people and treating them as part of the furniture. "Package for Mr. Thompson," Marcus said, holding up his scanner. "Package for Mr. Thompson," Marcus said, holding up his scanner. "Needs a signature." The housekeeper glanced at the large box. "It's quite heavy, isn't it? Would you mind bringing it inside? Just to the foyer. We've been expecting this, and Mr. Thompson will want it placed carefully." Marcus hesitated. He wasn't technically supposed to go inside people's houses, but the package was heavy, and the woman looked like she might struggle with it. "Sure, no problem." He hoisted the box and followed her through the front door, into a foyer that was bigger than his entire apartment. The ceiling soared 2 stories high. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, catching the afternoon light and scattering rainbows across marble floors. A curved staircase swept upward to the 2nd floor, and expensive-looking art hung on every wall. Marcus tried not to gawk as he carried the package where the housekeeper indicated, near a small table by the wall. "Just there is fine," she said, pulling out her phone to summon someone, probably whoever was supposed to deal with the package next. Marcus set it down carefully, straightened up, and was about to ask her to sign his scanner when something across the room caught his eye. A grand piano sat in what looked like a formal sitting room visible through an archway. The piano itself was beautiful, black lacquer that gleamed in the sunlight streaming through tall windows. But it wasn't the piano that made Marcus freeze. It was the photograph on top of it. A large silver frame held a portrait of a young woman in a wedding dress. She was beautiful, probably in her early 20s, with dark skin and a radiant smile. The style of the dress and the quality of the photograph suggested it was taken in the early 2000s, maybe 20 years ago, and the woman in the photograph was his mother. Marcus felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He took a step toward the piano, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. It was her. He was certain. The same eyes, the same smile, the same small scar above her left eyebrow that she'd gotten as a kid falling off a bike. His mother. Younger, dressed like a bride in a silver frame in a billionaire's mansion. "Are you all right?" The housekeeper's voice startled him. Marcus turned to see her watching him with concern. "That photo," Marcus said, his voice coming out strangled. "The woman in the wedding dress, who is she?" The housekeeper's expression shifted to something sadder, more careful. "That's Mrs. Thompson," Mr. shifted. "Thompson's late wife. She passed away many years ago. Such a tragedy." Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. Late wife passed away, but his mother was alive. She was alive and working 2 jobs and living in their apartment. She wasn't dead. She was. When did she die? Marcus heard himself ask. "When?" "Oh, it's been about 18 years now," the housekeeper said, her voice gentle with the practiced sympathy of someone who'd told this story before. "Car accident, terrible thing. She was pregnant at the time, too. Mr. Thompson lost both his wife and his unborn child. He's never really recovered." The room spun. 18 years ago, when Marcus would have been born. Marcus fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking. "Can I show you something?" The housekeeper looked puzzled, but nodded. Marcus pulled up his photos, scrolling frantically, until he found one from last week, his mother laughing at something he'd said, her face clear and unmistakable in the afternoon light of their kitchen. He held the phone out to the housekeeper. "Is this her? Is this her? Is this Mrs. Thompson?" The housekeeper took the phone, looked at the screen, and went absolutely pale. That's impossible. Where did you get this photo?" "That's my mother," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's Rachel Johnson. She's alive. She's been alive this whole time." The housekeeper sat down heavily in a nearby chair, staring at the phone screen like it might bite her. "I don't understand. I was at her funeral. There was a casket. Mr. Thompson was devastated. This doesn't make any sense." But it was making a terrible kind of sense to Marcus. His mother's refusal to talk about his father. The way she'd moved them several times when he was younger, always to places where nobody knew them. The way she flinched whenever someone asked about her past. She hadn't just left his father. She'd faked her own death. Marcus barely remembered the drive home. He white-knuckled the steering wheel, his mind racing through every conversation he'd ever had with his mother about his father, about their past, about why it was just the 2 of them. She'd lied. About everything. He parked crookedly in front of their apartment building and took the stairs 2 at a time. His mother would be home. She had a 2-hour break between her day job and her night shift. He burst through the door to find her in the kitchen, making herself a sandwich before she had to leave again. She looked up with a smile that faltered the moment she saw his face. "Marcus?" "What's wrong?" He pulled out his phone, opened the photo he'd taken of the wedding picture, and held it out to her without a word. Rachel's face drained of all color. The butter knife fell from her hand and clattered against the counter. "Where did you get that?" Her voice was barely audible. "Thompson estate," Marcus said, and his voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Delivered a package. Saw the photo." The housekeeper said, "That's Mrs. Thompson, William Thompson's dead wife." His mother sat down at their small kitchen table like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. Her hands were shaking. "Mom," Marcus sat across from her, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why is your picture in a billionaire's mansion? Why does everyone think you're dead? For a long moment, Rachel just sat there, tears streaming down her face. Then, in a voice Marcus had never heard from her before, small and broken, she started to talk. I was married to William Thompson, she began. 20 years ago. I was 22. He was 28. We met at the hospital where I was working as a nursing student. He'd come in for a minor sports injury, and we just connected. She wiped her eyes, but the tears kept coming. He came from money, old money, generational wealth. I came from nothing, working-class family, student loans, dreams of becoming a nurse. We fell in love anyway. When he proposed, I said yes, even though I knew his family would never accept me. Marcus sat frozen, listening. They were terrible to me, Rachel continued, her voice cracking. His mother especially. She called me a gold digger to my face. Said I'd trapped her son. When I got pregnant with you, they said it probably wasn't even William's baby. They demanded a paternity test before you were born. I was humiliated, devastated. What did Dad do? Marcus asked quietly. He was torn, Rachel said. He loved me. I know he did. But his family had so much power over him. The money, the business, the expectations. He tried to stand up for me, but it was never enough. They made my life hell. Every family dinner was torture. Every interaction was designed to make me feel small and unwelcome and wrong. She took a shuddering breath. I was 8 months pregnant with you, and we just left another horrible family dinner where his mother had questioned whether you were really William's child. Again, and I just broke. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't raise you in that environment, surrounded by people who would never accept you, who would always make you feel like you weren't good enough. So you faked your death? Marcus couldn't keep the shock out of his voice. Rachel nodded miserably. I took our car to a remote area upstate, left it near a cliff with my purse, my phone, my jewelry. Made it look like an accident. I had a friend who helped me, gave me cash, got me a fake ID, drove me to another state. I started over as Rachel Johnson. Had you a month later, raised you alone. But why? Marcus asked, his emotions a storm of confusion, anger and heartbreak. Why not just divorce him? Why let everyone think we were dead? Because they never would have let me go, Rachel said fiercely. With their money and lawyers, they would have fought for custody. They would have taken you away from me and raised you to be like them. Entitled, prejudiced, cruel. I couldn't let that happen. I chose poverty with love over wealth with toxicity. She reached across the table for his hand. I know I took away your choice to know your father. I know I deprived you of a life of privilege and opportunity. I know I was selfish. But Marcus, I was young and scared and so tired of being treated like I didn't matter. I did what I thought was right to protect you. Marcus pulled his hand back, standing up. Does he know about me? Does he know I exist? He thinks we both died, Rachel whispered. He thinks he lost his wife and his son in one night. Oh God, what have I done? Marcus paced the small kitchen, his world completely upended. His father was alive. His father was a billionaire. His father had mourned him for 17 years, and Marcus had a choice to make. He looked at his mother, really looked at her. Saw the exhaustion in her eyes from working 2 jobs. Saw the worn clothes she wore because she spent every dollar on him. Saw the gray hair she was getting at 42 because she'd sacrificed everything for him. She'd made a terrible choice, but she'd made it out of love. I need to meet him, Marcus said quietly. I need to meet my father. Rachel nodded, fresh tears falling. I know. I understand. I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. 3 days later, Marcus stood at the front door of the Thompson estate again. This time, he wasn't holding a package. He was holding his birth certificate, his student ID, and a photograph of his mother from 20 years ago that he'd found in a box in her closet. He rang the doorbell. The same housekeeper answered, and her eyes widened in recognition. You, she breathed, the delivery boy. My name is Marcus Johnson, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. I need to speak with Mr. and Pichette. I need to speak with Mr. Thompson, he said, his voice steadier than he felt. Thompson, it's personal, it's important, please. The housekeeper hesitated, then nodded. Wait here. 5 minutes felt like 5 hours. Then a man appeared in the doorway. William Thompson was in his 50s, tall and distinguished, with salt and pepper hair and the kind of posture that came from a lifetime of confidence. But his eyes were sad, the kind of sad that had settled in and made a home there years ago. My housekeeper said you needed to speak with me. His voice was polite but puzzled. Do I know you? Marcus took a breath. My name is Marcus Johnson. I think you knew my mother, Rachel. William went very still. Rachel, who you were married to. Rachel, who supposedly died in a car accident 18 years ago. Rachel, who was pregnant with your son. The color drained from William's face. He grabbed the doorframe for support. That's not possible. Rachel died. I buried her. I mourned her. You buried an empty casket, Marcus said gently. She didn't die, Mr. Thompson, she ran. She was so broken by how your family treated her that she faked her death and started over. He held out the photograph. This is her now. She's alive. And I'm your son. Liam took the photograph with shaking hands, staring at the image of Rachel as she looked now older, but unmistakably the woman he'd loved and lost. I don't understand, he whispered. Why would she? How could she? How could she? Because they called her a gold digger and questioned whether I was even yours. Because she was young and scared and didn't think she had any other choice. William's legs seemed to give out. He sat heavily on the front step, still clutching the photograph. She was pregnant. She was going to have my son. I lost them both. Or I thought I did. 20 years. 20 years I've mourned you both. I'm here now, Marcus said quietly. And I think maybe we should talk. William looked up at him with eyes full of tears and saw, perhaps for the first time, the features he'd passed down. The shape of the eyes, the line of the jaw, the way Marcus stood with his shoulders squared against the world. You're really my son. I'd like to take a DNA test to be sure, Marcus said. But yeah, I think I am. William stood, moved forward, and for a moment, Marcus thought he might hug him. Instead, he just stood there looking at Marcus like he was seeing a ghost made flesh. You're real, William whispered. My son is real. 2 weeks later, Marcus sat in a lawyer's office with his father, staring at a piece of paper that confirmed with 99.9% certainty what they'd both already known in their hearts. William broke down, crying like he'd been holding it in for 2 decades. Marcus sat there awkwardly, not sure if he should comfort this man who was his father but also a stranger. I have a son, William kept saying. I have a son. The weeks that followed were complicated. William wanted to know everything about Marcus. His interests, his grades, his dreams, his favorite foods. The small details that made up a life William had missed entirely. Marcus found himself drawn to this man who looked at him with such wonder and regret. His father was kind, thoughtful, nothing like the weak person Marcus had imagined based on his mother's story. He was just a man who'd been caught between love and obligation and had failed to protect the people who mattered most. Move in with me, William said. One evening as they sat in his study, surrounded by books and the quiet wealth of a life Marcus couldn't quite fathom. Let me pay for your college. Let me give you everything I should have given you from the beginning. Marcus felt the pull of it. The promise of a life without financial stress, without watching his mother work herself to exhaustion, without wondering if he'd be able to afford the education he dreamed about. But he thought about his mother and their small apartment, waiting for him to come home. What about my mom? Marcus asked. Is she invited to this new life? William's face hardened slightly. She let me think you were dead for 17 years. She let me mourn a son who was alive. That's not easy to forgive. She made a mistake, Marcus said carefully. A big one. But she raised me alone. She worked 2 jobs so I could have food and clothes and a chance at a future. She loved me every single day. I won't abandon her." William was quiet for a long moment. "You're more principled than I was at your age." "Than I am now, if I'm honest." "Then maybe," Marcus said, "we all need to figure out how to heal together. Not me choosing between you, but all of us figuring out how to be a family. A weird, broken, complicated family, but a family." William looked at his son, this young man he'd just met, but who carried his DNA and apparently his better qualities, and felt something shift in his chest. "Family therapy?" he asked with a slight smile. For starters, Marcus agreed. 6 months later, Marcus sat in a dorm room at Northwestern University, where he'd been accepted with a full scholarship that his father had insisted was Marcus's achievement, not his money. William had offered to pay for everything, but Marcus had compromised. He'd accept help, but he'd also keep working, keep earning his own way. On his desk sat 2 photographs in matching frames. One was of his mother, taken just last month, smiling despite everything. The other was of his father, taken on the day Marcus moved into the dorm, pride and love written all over his face. The road to this moment had been painful. Rachel and William had met face to face for the first time in 20 years, and it had been devastating, accusations and apologies and tears that seemed like they'd never stop. William's family had been horrified to learn Marcus existed, their prejudice as strong as ever, but William had cut them off entirely this time. "I failed to protect your mother," he'd told Marcus. "I won't make that mistake with you." Marcus had learned that family was more complicated than he'd ever imagined, that love and hurt could coexist, that forgiveness was a process, not a destination, that his mother had been wrong to fake her death but also desperate and alone, that his father had been weak but was trying to be stronger now. He'd learned that the photo in the mansion had revealed a truth that changed everything, not just for him, but for 3 people who'd been living with the consequences of one terrible decision for 20 years. And he'd learned that sometimes the poorest upbringing gives you the richest values. He wouldn't trade the lessons his mother taught him, about work ethic, about resilience, about loving fiercely even when the world is hard, for any amount of money. But he was Jay. Grateful, deeply grateful to know his father now, to have the chance to build something new from the wreckage of the past. Marcus looked at both photographs and felt, for the first time in his life, complete. He had his mother's strength and his father's resources. He had a past full of struggle and a future full of possibility. He had 2 parents who loved him, even if they were still learning how to be in the same room together. The delivery to the Thompson estate had been supposed to be routine. Just another package, just another mansion, just another day. Instead, it had been the day everything changed. The day Marcus Johnson discovered he was also Marcus Thompson. The day the truth, painful and complicated and ultimately freeing, finally came to light.